The winds of the northern territories carry whispers of her, the woman who vanished into the cursed mountains a decade ago. They say she walks like a ghost between ancient pines, leaving no tracks in virgin snow. They say wolves bow their heads as she passes, recognizing something in her that even she has forgotten. Isolde of the Blackthorn was once like any other wolf, until betrayal stripped her of pack, of purpose, of belonging. The mountains should have killed her that first winter. They didn't. Instead, they carved away everything soft, everything unnecessary, until only steel and survival remained. For 10 brutal winters, she has answered to no one. Her hands have grown calloused from bowstrings. Her heart has grown guarded from solitude. She has learned to find sustenance where others would starve, to create warmth where others would freeze, to hear warnings in the wind that others would ignore. But destiny isn't finished with her yet. When the Alpha King's golden eyes find her across a rushing river, something ancient and inevitable awakens. His voice reverberates through the forest like thunder. You've always belonged somewhere, Isolde. You've just been waiting for someone to claim you. She has outrun wolves, outsmarted bears, and outlasted blizzards that buried entire villages. But how does one escape a fate written in the stars? How does a woman who has forgotten how to trust become the queen of territories she never sought to rule? The lone wolf is about to discover that sometimes surviving isn't enough. Sometimes the gods demand you live. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The 10th winter was always the worst. Isolde had learned this truth during her years in the mountains, where time stretched like an endless white canvas, painted with varying shades of survival. The first winter had been about staying alive through the night. The 5th, about learning to trap what couldn't be hunted. But the 10th winter brought a bone-deep weariness that settled in alongside the cold. This morning, she woke before dawn as always, her breath forming clouds in the small cave she'd claimed as shelter. Frost clung to her eyelashes, and the fire had died to embers hours ago. She didn't mind. The cold had become a companion of sorts, more reliable than any person she'd ever known. Another day, she whispered to herself, the words a ritual that had kept her sane through 3,622 mornings alone. Her voice was rough from disuse, a sound she barely recognized anymore. Outside, the forest stirred with early light. The worst of winter was finally breaking, evident in the droplets melting from pine needles and the subtle shift in air that promised spring. Eventually, Isolde moved with practiced efficiency, gathering her snares and bow. Food wouldn't find itself. Her body was lean but strong, hardened by survival. Dark hair, once soft and flowing, now hung in a practical braid down her back, threaded with small wooden beads she'd carved during the endless nights. Little indulgences to remind herself she was still human, still a woman, still alive. The tracks were fresh in the thinning snow, rabbit, from the look of them. Isolde followed silently, her worn leather boots making almost no sound. Years of hunting had taught her to move like a shadow, to become part of the forest, rather than an intruder in it. She was so focused on the trail that she almost missed the other prints. Larger, deeper, wolf. Isolde froze, arrow nocked, but not yet drawn. Wolves weren't uncommon in these mountains, but these tracks were different, too large for ordinary wolves, and the pattern suggested purpose, not the random wanderings of animals seeking food. Shifters. Her heart accelerated, a rush of adrenaline that felt foreign after years of careful emotional control. Shifter packs rarely ventured this high into the mountains, especially in winter. The northern territories were considered cursed by many, haunted by the spirits of those who'd died in the Great War, a convenient superstition that had kept Isolde safely isolated. Until now. She should retreat to her cave, gather her few possessions, and move higher up the mountain. It was the sensible choice, the safe choice. Instead, Isolde followed the tracks. Curiosity had almost been her undoing once before. 10 years ago, curiosity about what lay beyond her pack's territory had led her to discover secrets that powerful wolves preferred to keep buried, secrets that had cost her everything. "Fool me twice," she murmured, even as she continued tracking the shifters with practiced stealth. The prince led her to a clearing she knew well, one of the few flat expanses in this part of the mountains, where wildflowers would bloom in summer. Now, it held something far more dangerous than flowers. Wolves. Enormous, powerful creatures with coats of varying colors, all gathered around one massive black wolf whose size dwarfed even the largest among them. Isolde crouched behind a fallen tree, her body perfectly still as she counted. 12 wolves. A scouting party, perhaps, though larger than any she'd encountered in her former life. And that black wolf. Something about him sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with the mountain air. As if sensing her scrutiny, the black wolf's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. Isolde ducked lower, cursing silently. Downwind. She was downwind. He shouldn't be able to. Golden eyes locked directly onto her hiding spot. Isolde didn't hesitate. She fired one arrow, not at the wolf, but into the air above the pack. The distraction was enough. As the wolves startled at the sudden sound, she was already running, her feet finding purchase on rocks and roots with a surety born of a decade's intimacy with this mountain. Behind her, a howl rose into the morning air, not an alarm, but a command. The sound of it reverberated through the trees, through the very ground beneath her feet, and somehow, impossibly through her chest. She stumbled, catching herself against a tree trunk. That was no ordinary howl. That was the call of an alpha, a powerful one. Isolde ran faster. Her cave wasn't safe now. It was the first place they'd track her to. Instead, she headed for the river, her mind calculating routes and hiding places. If she could reach the falls, cross at the narrow point, and climb to the western ridge, she might lose them. The sound of pursuit grew closer, faster than she'd anticipated. These weren't just any shifters. They were trained, organized, and determined. The river appeared through the trees, rushing with spring melt. Isolde didn't slow as she approached the bank, leaping into the frigid water with a gasp that she couldn't suppress. The current immediately grabbed at her, trying to pull her under, but she fought it, arms stroking powerfully toward the far bank. Cold. So cold it burned, but cold was an old friend, and Isolde had long ago learned to endure its embrace. She was halfway across when she heard the splash behind her. Against her better judgment, she looked back. The black wolf had entered the water, his powerful form cutting through the current with ease. The others remained on the bank, watching, waiting. Only their leader followed. Only their leader was needed. Isolde reached the far bank, hauling herself up onto slick rocks, her clothes heavy with water. The bow was lost to the river, but she still had her knife. Not that it would do much good against a shifter of that size. Still, she wouldn't go down without a fight. She turned to face the wolf, knife drawn, water streaming from her clothes and hair. "Stay back," she warned, voice rusty but firm. "I have no quarrel with your pack, but I will defend myself." The black wolf emerged from the river, shaking water from his massive coat in a display that sent droplets glittering through the air like diamonds. Then, to Isolde's shock, the air around him shimmered, his form blurring and expanding until a man stood where the wolf had been. Tall, impossibly so, with shoulders broad enough to block the sun. His skin was bronzed, despite the winter months, marked with intricate tattoos that wrapped around his arms and disappeared beneath the waistband of breeches that materialized with his transformation. His face was all hard angles and uncompromising lines, framed by black hair that fell just past his shoulders. But it was his eyes that held her, still that impossible gold, regarding her with an intensity that made her feel like prey for the first time in years. "Isolde of the Blackthorn Pack," he said, his voice as deep as the mountain itself. "You've been difficult to find." The knife nearly slipped from her fingers. 10 years. 10 years since anyone had spoken her name. 10 years since anyone had known which pack she'd once belonged to. "Who are you?" she demanded, raising the blade higher. "What do you want?" His lips curved in what might have been a smile on a different face, on a different man. On him, it looked dangerous. "I am Kale," he said, as if the name alone should mean something to her. When she didn't react, his eyes narrowed slightly. "Alpha King of the Northern Territories. And what I want, Isolde of the Blackthorn, is you." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet, and for a moment, Isolde thought the river's cold had finally claimed her senses. An Alpha King. The Alpha King. Stories of the new ruler who had united the fragmented northern packs had reached even her isolated mountain over the years, carried on the wind, whispered by the occasional traveler she observed from afar. "There's been a mistake," she said, backing away slowly. I'm no one. I belong to no pack. That, he said, stepping closer despite her raised knife, is where you're wrong. You've always belonged somewhere, Isolde. You've just been waiting for someone to claim you. His words should have angered her, the presumption that she was something to be claimed, like territory or property. Instead, they awakened something dormant inside her, a recognition she couldn't name but felt in her bones. Stay back, she warned again, but her voice lacked conviction. Cale stopped, not out of fear. Nothing about this man suggested he understood the concept, but seeming to grant her the space as a courtesy. You've survived 10 winters alone on this mountain, he said, his gaze traveling over her with an assessment that felt almost physical. Most alphas couldn't manage what you have, let alone a lone wolf. I'm not a wolf. His smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too sharp for his human form. Your scent says otherwise, little survivor. Faint after all these years in isolation, but unmistakable. You can hide from the world, but not from what you are. Isolde's hand tightened on the knife. What do you want from me? She asked again, because surely he wanted something. No one came looking for a disgraced wolf from a forgotten pack without a reason. I told you, Cale said, and now he did move closer, seeming unconcerned by her weapon. I want you. Why? The question burst from her before she could stop it. His golden eyes glowed with an inner light that had nothing to do with the sun. Because you're mine, he said simply. My queen. And it's time you took your place by my side. The knife clattered to the ground as Isolde's world went black. When she awoke, she was no longer by the river. The scent of pine and smoke filled her nostrils, along with something else. Something male and powerful that made her wolf stir for the first time in years. Isolde opened her eyes to find herself in a tent, lying on furs that felt impossibly soft after years of sleeping on stone. Outside, voices murmured, fires crackled, and the steady rhythm of a pack going about its business surrounded her. She sat up quickly, ignoring the dizziness that followed. Her clothes had been changed. She now wore a simple tunic of soft wool that smelled faintly of pine and something spiced. Beneath it, her skin felt clean. Someone had bathed her while she was unconscious. The thought sent a flush of anger through her. The tent flap opened, and a young woman entered, carrying a tray of food. She startled when she saw Isolde awake, nearly dropping her burden. Oh, I should tell the Alpha. She set the tray down hastily and made to leave. Wait, Isolde called, her voice still rough. Where am I? What is this place? The girl hesitated, glancing at the tent flap as if expecting someone to appear. The Alpha King's camp, she said finally, at the base of the mountain. So they had carried her down while she was unconscious. Isolde's jaw clenched. And who are you? Lyra, the girl replied, seeming to relax slightly. I'm a healer's apprentice. I've been looking after you since they brought you in yesterday. Yesterday? Isolde's heart sank. A full day lost. A full day during which she could have escaped, could have disappeared back into the mountains. Lyra nodded, then gestured to the tray. You should eat. The Alpha. He was most insistent that you regain your strength. For what purpose? Isolde asked sharply. The girl blinked, clearly surprised by the question. For the claiming ceremony, of course. Tomorrow at dawn. Isolde felt as if she'd been plunged back into the icy river. What claiming ceremony? Lyra's eyes widened. The Alpha didn't tell you? But I thought... She stopped, looking uncomfortable. It's not my place to... Tell me, Isolde insisted, rising from the furs. She was unsteady on her feet but refused to show weakness. Now, the apprentice took a step back. The Alpha King has declared you his mate. Tomorrow he will claim you before the entire pack, and you will become his queen. The world tilted again, but Isolde refused to faint a second time. Instead, she moved to the tent flap, pushing it aside to reveal a large encampment spread across what had once been a meadow. Fires burned at regular intervals, illuminating dozens of tents arranged in concentric circles around a central space. Warriors moved through the camp, some in wolf form, others human, all armed and alert. And in the center, standing tall and unmistakable among his people, was Cale, the Alpha King, issuing orders to a group of wolves who listened with rapt attention. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, golden eyes finding hers across the distance. A smile spread across his face, predatory, possessive, pleased. Isolde let the tent flap fall closed, her heart thundering in her chest. "There must be some mistake," she said, turning back to Lyra. "I don't know this Alpha. I've never met him before today. He can't possibly intend to claim me as his mate." Lyra looked genuinely confused. "But the Alpha King has been searching for you for nearly 2 years. He's had scouts combing the mountains, following rumors, seeking any trace of the lone wolf who survived where others perished. He said—" She hesitated again. "What did he say?" Isolde pressed. "He said that the gods themselves had chosen you, that your survival was proof of your strength, and that only the strongest could stand beside the Alpha King as his equal." Lyra's voice had taken on an almost reverent quality. "No queen has ruled the northern territories in over a century, not since the Great War, but the Alpha King has declared that the time has come for the packs to be whole again. Male and female, Alpha and Luna, king and queen." Isolde shook her head, trying to make sense of it all. "This is madness. I left pack life behind a decade ago. I'm no Luna. I'm certainly not a queen. The Alpha King says differently," Lyra replied, with a certainty that suggested Kale's word was law, which, Isolde realized, it probably was. "And tomorrow, when he places his mark upon you, no wolf in the northern territories will dare question it." Isolde's hand went instinctively to her neck, where an Alpha's claiming bite would soon be placed if Kale had his way. The thought sent an involuntary shiver through her that wasn't entirely unpleasant, and that troubled her more than anything else. "I need to speak with him," she said firmly. Lyra nodded, seemingly relieved that Isolde wasn't arguing further. "I'll tell him you're awake." "No need," came a deep voice from the tent entrance. "I'm already here." Kyle ducked through the opening, his massive frame filling the space immediately. He wore a simple tunic now, open at the throat, to reveal more of those intriguing tattoos, and leather breeches that did nothing to disguise the power in his legs. A silver circlet rested on his brow, subtle compared to the gaudy crowns of southern kings, but no less a symbol of his authority. Lyra immediately lowered her eyes and bowed her head. "Alpha King," she murmured, backing toward the exit. "Leave us," Kyle commanded, his eyes never leaving Isolde. The apprentice slipped out without another word, leaving Isolde alone with the man who intended to claim her. "You had no right," Isolde said immediately, lifting her chin, "to take me from my mountain, to declare me your anything without my consent." Kale studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his severe features into something almost boyish. "Fierce," he said, the word carrying a note of approval. "Good. A queen should have fire." "I am not your queen," Isolde insisted. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I want no part in it." He moved closer, and it took everything in Isolde not to step back. He smelled of forest and smoke, and something uniquely male that made her wolf pace restlessly beneath her skin. "This is no game, Isolde of the Blackthorn," he said quietly. "This is destiny, yours and mine, intertwined from the moment you set foot on that mountain and refused to die." "You don't know me," she countered. "You know nothing about me except my name and former pack." "I know you were falsely accused of betraying your Alpha," Kyle said, his voice steady. "I know you fled, rather than face execution for a crime you didn't commit. I know you've lived alone for 10 years, hunting and gathering and surviving where wolves twice your size would have perished in the first winter." Isolde stared at him, stunned into momentary silence. "How could you possibly—" "I make it my business to know everything about my territories, including the wolves who inhabit them." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face with a gentleness that belied his size. "And especially the wolf destined to rule beside me." Isolde jerked away from his touch, though her skin seemed to burn where his fingers had been. "I left pack life behind for a reason," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I have no desire to return to it, especially not as some trophy mate for an Alpha who collects territories like others collect pelts." Something dangerous flashed in Kale's golden eyes, a reminder that beneath the human exterior lurked a predator of unimaginable power. "Is that what you think this is?" he asked, his voice deceptively soft. "That I tracked you for 2 years, followed every rumor, sent my best scouts into the cursed mountains, also I could add one more possession to my collection?" When he put it like that, it did sound absurd. Isolde crossed her arms. "Then why? Why me? There must be dozens of suitable females among your packs, wolves who actually want to be queen. Hundreds. he agreed readily. Wolves who have been paraded before me since I united the territories. Wolves with political connections, with wealth, with bloodlines that stretch back to the first shifters. He stepped closer again, and this time Isolde couldn't retreat without pressing herself against the tent wall. And not one of them is worthy. And I am? She asked skeptically. A disgraced wolf with no pack, no standing, and no desire for the position you're offering? Yes. The certainty in his voice was absolute. You are worthy precisely because you don't seek power, because you've lived without a pack and survived, because you understand what it means to stand alone against the world. His eyes held hers, intense and unwavering, just as I have. Something in his words resonated within her, striking a chord she hadn't known existed. She pushed the feeling away. I won't be claimed against my will, she said firmly. I won't be anyone's mate, not even an alpha king's without my consent. Kale studied her for a long moment, his expression inscrutable. Then he nodded once. Fair enough. Isolde blinked, thrown by his easy capitulation. What? I said fair enough, he repeated. I won't force a claiming on an unwilling mate. That's not the foundation I wish to build upon. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by suspicion. So I'm free to go? Back to my mountain? I didn't say that. The corner of his mouth quirked up. I said I wouldn't claim you against your will. I didn't say I would stop trying to convince you. And if I can't be convinced? She challenged. Kale's smile was confident, bordering on arrogant. You will be. Isolde scoffed. You seem very certain. I am. He moved to the tent flap, lifting it slightly. The ceremony is tomorrow at dawn. You have until then to make your decision. And if my decision is no, he looked back at her, his golden eyes gleaming in the dim light, then you will remain as my honored guest until you change your mind. You'll be treated with respect, given everything you need, protected as one of my pack, but you will not return to that mountain alone. Anger flared within her. So I'm your prisoner. You're my mate, Kale corrected, his voice gentle but firm. Whether you accept it today, tomorrow, or a year from now doesn't change that fact. The gods have spoken, Isolde. Your survival on that mountain wasn't chance. It was preparation. For this. For us. He ducked out of the tent before she could respond, leaving Isolde staring after him, her thoughts in turmoil. Outside, she could hear the camp continuing its activities, voices calling to one another, children laughing, the sounds of a pack that functioned as a single organism. Sounds she had almost forgotten in her decade of solitude. Isolde sank down onto the furs, burying her face in her hands. This couldn't be happening. After 10 years of building a life apart from the politics and dangers of pack society, she now found herself at the center of it all, claimed by the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories, expected to become his queen. It was absurd, impossible. And yet, as the evening deepened around her, as the scents and sounds of the pack washed over her, Isolde felt something long dormant stirring within her chest. Her wolf, so quiet for so many years, was awake and alert, sensing something Isolde herself couldn't, or wouldn't, acknowledge. The possibility that Kale might be right, that after all these years, she had finally found where she belonged. The dawn arrived with a golden light that spilled across the camp, illuminating the preparations already underway. Isolde watched from the entrance of her tent, having slept little during the night. All around her, wolves moved with purpose, setting up an elaborate arrangement of torches and flowers in the central clearing, for her claiming ceremony, for a future she had never imagined. Have you decided? Isolde turned to find Lyra approaching, carrying fresh clothes draped over her arm. The healer's apprentice looked nervous but hopeful, her eyes darting to the activity in the clearing. It's not really a decision if both options involve staying here, is it? Isolde replied, though without the bitterness she might have expected to feel. Lyra hesitated, then held out the garments. The Alpha King asked that these be brought to you. For today. Isolde took them reluctantly. The fabric was finer than anything she'd worn in a decade. A dress of deep forest green, embroidered with silver thread that formed patterns reminiscent of mountain peaks. It was beautiful, but also a symbol of everything she'd left behind when she fled to the mountains. Pack politics, social hierarchies, the expectations placed upon female wolves. I don't, she began. Please, Lyra interrupted softly. At least try it on. The Alpha had it made specially, based on the stories of your mountain. Curiosity won out. Isolde retreated into the tent, shedding the simple tunic she'd slept in, and slipping the dress over her head. The fabric settled against her skin like water, somehow both substantial and weightless. It fit perfectly, hugging her lean frame without constraining her movement. When she emerged, Lyra's eyes widened. "Oh," she breathed. "You look like her." "Like who?" Isolde asked, smoothing the unfamiliar fabric over her hips. "The Queen of the North, from the old stories. The wolf woman who came from the mountains to save the territories during the Great War." Lyra's expression was awestruck. That's why he chose green. It was her color, too. Something cold settled in Isolde's stomach. Is that what this is about? Some prophecy or legend? Lyra seemed to realize she'd said too much. "I should go," she murmured, backing away. "The ceremony begins soon. Someone will come for you when it's time." She hurried off before Isolde could press further, leaving her standing alone, draped in a dead queen's colors, feeling increasingly like a pawn in a game she didn't understand. The central clearing had been transformed. Torches lined a path leading to a raised platform, where Kale stood waiting, his powerful frame adorned in dark leathers accented with silver. The circlet gleamed on his brow, catching the morning light. Hundreds of wolves gathered around the clearing, their expressions ranging from curious to expectant as they watched their alpha king, as they waited for her. Isolde remained in the shadows between two tents, observing. This was her last chance to make a decision. Submit to the claiming and become queen of a territory she had never sought to rule, or refuse and remain a captive guest until she changed her mind. Neither option appealed to her, yet something held her in place when she could have melted back into the forest. Something beyond curiosity or resignation. "He won't force you." Isolde spun to find an older woman standing behind her, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe braid, her eyes sharp and knowing. Despite her age, she carried herself with a warrior's bearing. "Who are you?" Isolde asked, immediately wary. "Thora." The woman inclined her head slightly. "I serve as the Alpha King's head of security, and occasionally his conscience." "You're his beta," Isolde guessed, recognizing the air of authority that surrounded the woman. Thora's lips quirked. "Something like that. I've known Kyle since he was a pup with more teeth than sense. I watched him unite packs that had been killing each other for generations. I've seen him build something from nothing." Her keen eyes assessed Isolde frankly. "And I've never seen him like this over anyone." Isolde looked away, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. "You said he won't force me. How can you be so sure?" "Because I know him," Thora replied simply. "If you walk away now, he'll be disappointed, hurt even." "But he meant what he said. He won't claim an unwilling mate." "Then why go through with all this?" Isolde gestured to the elaborate setup, the waiting crowd. "Why announce a ceremony before knowing if I'd agree?" Thora's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Because he believes, with every fiber of his being, that you are meant to be his queen. And Kale has never been one to doubt his instincts." She paused, then added, "Just as you should not doubt yours." Before Isolde could respond, a horn sounded, signaling the official start of the ceremony. The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning expectantly toward the path where the Alpha King's chosen mate would walk. "It's time to decide," Thora said quietly. "Whatever you choose it fully. A wolf who stands between two paths belongs to neither." With that cryptic advice, she slipped away, leaving Isolde alone with her thoughts. The camp waited in hushed anticipation. On the platform, Kale's golden eyes swept the crowd, searching. He hadn't seen her yet, didn't know she was watching from the shadows. Isolde closed her eyes, reaching inward to the wolf she had kept caged for so long. "What do you want?" she asked silently. For the first time in years, her wolf answered with perfect clarity. "Him. Pack. Home." Isolde's eyes snapped open, her decision made. She stepped out of the shadows and onto the torch-lined path. A murmur rippled through the crowd as she appeared, wolves craning their necks to catch their first glimpse of the woman their Alpha King had chosen. Isolde kept her gaze fixed ahead, refusing to be intimidated by the hundreds of eyes following her progress. Kyle's expression shifted the moment he saw her, relief flooding his features, followed by something deeper, more intense. His golden eyes never left hers as she approached the platform, and Isolde found she couldn't look away even if she'd wanted to. When she reached the steps, he extended his hand. A choice. She could still turn away. Isolde placed her hand in his, allowing him to guide her onto the platform beside him. His skin was warm against hers, his grip gentle but secure. Up close, she could see flecks of amber in his golden eyes, could smell the distinctive scent that had haunted her dreams the night before, something primal and undeniably alpha, mixed with mountain pine and a hint of spice. "You came," he said, his voice pitched low for her ears alone. "I haven't agreed to anything yet," she replied, equally quiet. "I'm still deciding." A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Fair enough." He turned to address the assembled pack, his voice carrying effortlessly across the clearing. "Wolves of the Northern Territories," he began, his hand still holding Isolde's. "For too long, our packs have been fragmented, weakened by old grudges and pointless rivalries. For too long, we have forgotten what made us strong in the days before the Great War: unity, purpose, and balance." The crowd listened in rapt attention, hanging on their alpha's every word. The ancient texts speak of a time when our territories were ruled by both Alpha and Luna, king and queen, each bringing different strengths to the leadership of our people. Kyle's grip on Isolde's hand tightened slightly. "Today marks the return of that balance. Today I present to you Isolde of the Blackthorn, who has survived 10 winters alone on the Cursed Mountains, a feat no other wolf has accomplished." Murmurs swept through the crowd, wolves exchanging glances and whispered comments. Isolde fought the urge to shift uncomfortably under their collective gaze. "Some of you may question my choice," Kale continued, his voice taking on a harder edge. "You may wonder why I would select a lone wolf with no pack ties, no political advantage to bring. To those who doubt, I say this: true strength is not found in bloodlines or alliances. It is found in the wolf who survives when all odds are against them. It is found in the heart that remains true, even when abandoned by all others." He turned to face Isolde fully now, his golden eyes boring into hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Isolde of the Blackthorn survived when no one believed she could. She built a life from nothing, asking help from no one. She faced winter after winter alone, hunting when the game fled, finding warmth when the cold would kill, remaining strong when weakness would have been easier. His voice dropped, becoming almost reverent. "If that is not a queen's strength, then I do not know what is." The silence that followed his words was profound. Isolde could feel the weight of hundreds of gazes upon her, assessing, reconsidering. An older wolf stepped forward from the crowd, his graying beard and ceremonial robes marking him as a pack elder or priest. "Alpha King," he said, his voice reedy but clear. "Is it your intention to claim this wolf as your mate and queen this day?" Kale's eyes never left Isolde's. "It is." "And you, Isolde of the Blackthorn," the elder continued, turning to her, "do you accept the Alpha King's claim? Do you consent to become his mate, his queen, and the mother of his heirs?" The directness of the question startled her. Mother of his heirs. She hadn't even considered that aspect of what being Kale's mate would entail. Children, a family, things she had long ago accepted, she would never have. She looked at Kyle, searching his face for any sign that this was a mistake, that he was acting on impulse or political calculation, rather than genuine belief. What she found instead was absolute certainty. This man, this Alpha King, who had united warring packs and built a kingdom from chaos, believed with unwavering conviction that she was meant to stand beside him. "Before I answer," Isolde said, her voice stronger than she expected, "I would ask the Alpha King a question of my own." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. It was not customary for a prospective mate to question the Alpha during a claiming ceremony. The elder looked taken aback, but Kale merely nodded. "Ask," he said simply. Isolde turned to face him fully, aware that every wolf in the clearing was listening intently. "You speak of strength and survival," she said, "but ruling requires more than the ability to endure. It requires wisdom, diplomacy, knowledge of your people. All things I lack after 10 years in isolation." She met his gaze steadily. "Why do you truly believe I can be a queen to your people when I have spent a decade avoiding all contact with wolves?" It was the question that had plagued her through the night. Not why he wanted her, but why he thought she could actually fulfill the role he was thrusting upon her. Kyle considered her words, seeming to weigh his response carefully. When he spoke, it was with a thoughtfulness that belied his warrior's appearance. The territories need more than a political marriage, he said. More than a queen who knows the right words to say, the right hands to shake. They need a queen who understands loss, who has lived both within pack structure and outside it. One who sees with clear eyes, unclouded by old prejudices or alliances. He took both her hands in his now, his touch gentle despite the power she could feel beneath his skin. You may have been alone on that mountain, Isolde, but you were watching, learning, understanding the rhythms of a world most wolves never stop to see. His voice dropped lower, meant only for her despite the hundreds of listeners. Just as I've spent 2 years watching you, learning about the wolf who chose solitude over subjugation. Isolde's breath caught. You've been watching me? For 2 years? A hint of a smile touched his lips. Did you think I stumbled across your trail by accident yesterday? My scouts located you 18 months ago. I've made regular journeys to the mountain since then, observing from a distance, making sure you were safe. Why didn't you approach me then? She asked, thrown by this revelation. Because you weren't ready, he replied simply. And neither was I. Building a kingdom takes time, Isolde. I needed to secure the territories, establish laws, create a foundation strong enough to support a queen's return. His golden eyes held hers. And you needed time to heal from the wounds your old pack inflicted. Something in his words resonated deep within her. He had given her space when he could have claimed her months ago, had respected her solitude even as he planned for their future together. And now? She asked softly. Now the kingdom is stable. The packs are united under my rule. And you, his thumb brushed over her knuckles, you stood your ground against me at the river. You faced an alpha king with nothing but a knife and your own courage. You're ready to be more than a survivor, Isolde. You're ready to be a queen. His belief in her was palpable, a tangible force that seemed to wrap around her like a physical embrace. Isolde found herself wanting to believe it too, that her decade of exile hadn't been merely survival, but preparation for something more. Isolde of the Blackthorn, the elder prompted gently, reminding her that a question still hung unanswered between them. Do you accept the Alpha King's claim? The clearing fell silent once more, hundreds of wolves waiting for her response. Kale's hands remained gentle around hers, offering support without pressure. He would accept her decision, whatever it might be. She believed that now. Isolde drew a deep breath, listening one last time to the wolf within her, the wolf that had been silenced for so long. It stirred with anticipation, with longing, with a hope she had thought long extinguished. I accept, she said, her voice clear and carrying across the clearing. A collective exhalation swept through the crowd, followed immediately by cheers and howls of approval. Kale's expression shifted from controlled patience to unguarded joy, his golden eyes blazing with an inner light that transformed his severe features. Then let the claiming begin, the elder announced, raising his gnarled hands toward the sky. Kale's grip tightened on Isolde's hands. Are you certain? He asked, his voice pitched for her ears alone. There is no turning back from this. In answer, Isolde tilted her head slightly, exposing the curve of her neck, the traditional gesture of submission from a mate accepting an alpha's claim. Kale's eyes darkened, pupils dilating at the sight. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw, he lowered his head to the juncture where her neck met her shoulder. His breath was warm against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. Mine, he growled, the word vibrating through her very bones. Then his teeth sank into her flesh. Pain flared, sharp and immediate, followed by a rush of sensation unlike anything Isolde had ever experienced. Heat flooded through her veins, her wolf howling in recognition as the alpha's claim took hold. Images flashed behind her eyes, memories that weren't her own. A young boy training with wolves twice his size, a teenage Kale fighting for dominance, a man standing over the body of a rival alpha, blood on his hands, determination in his eyes. Kale's life, flowing into her through the claiming bond. When he finally pulled away, Isolde swayed on her feet, overwhelmed by the rush of power and connection. His arms came around her, steadying her, drawing her against the solid wall of his chest. It is done, the elder announced to the crowd. Behold your Alpha King and Queen. The pack erupted in howls and cheers, some shifting to their wolf forms to better express their joy. Torches blazed brighter, as if responding to the energy pulsing through the clearing, but Isolde barely noticed. Her world had narrowed to the man holding her, to the bond humming between them, new and raw and powerful. Through it, she could feel Kyle's emotions, his satisfaction, his relief, and beneath it all, a depth of feeling that staggered her. "You're trembling," he murmured against her hair. "The bond," she managed, struggling to find words for the sensation. "I can feel you. In my mind." His arms tightened around her. "It will settle with time. The initial claiming is always overwhelming." Is it always like this?" she asked, wondering if all mated pairs experience this level of connection, this merging of selves. Kyle pulled back slightly, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "No," he said quietly. "This is different. Stronger than any claiming I've witnessed." A small smile touched his lips. "It seems the gods truly did intend us for each other." Before Isolde could respond, they were surrounded by wolves offering congratulations and pledges of loyalty. Kale kept her close to his side, his hand resting protectively at the small of her back as he introduced her to pack leaders and elders whose names blurred together in her mind. Through it all, the claiming bond pulsed between them, a living thing binding them together. Isolde could feel Kale's pride as he presented her, his satisfaction at the pack's acceptance, his concern when he sensed her growing fatigue. "Enough," he said finally, his voice cutting through the celebratory clamor. "The Queen needs rest. The festivities will continue without us." No one dared argue with the Alpha King. The crowd parted, allowing Kyle to guide Isolde away from the clearing and toward a large tent set slightly apart from the others. The Alpha's quarters, she realized. His quarters, which would now be hers as well. Inside, the tent was surprisingly comfortable, furnished with a large bed piled with furs, several wooden chests, a table and chairs, and a small brazier providing warmth. Lanterns hung from the center pole, casting a soft glow over the space. As soon as they were alone, Kale's demeanor changed. The formal, controlled Alpha who had addressed his pack disappeared, replaced by a man watching her with undisguised concern. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice gentle. The claiming bond can be disorienting at first. Isolde sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly aware of how exhausted she felt. "It's a lot," she admitted. "I can feel your emotions, sense your thoughts. It's like having another person inside my head." Kale knelt before her, taking her hands in his. Through the bond, she could feel his genuine concern, his desire to make this transition easier for her. "It will become more manageable," he promised. "In time, you'll learn to control how much flows between us, to maintain your privacy when needed." Isolde studied his face, still adjusting to the reality that this man, this powerful Alpha who commanded hundreds of wolves, was now her mate, bound to her as she was to him, for life. "Why me?" she asked, the question that had haunted her since their first encounter still unanswered to her satisfaction. "Of all the wolves you could have chosen, why a disgraced loner who spent a decade hiding from pack society?" Kale's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the gentle touch at odds with his imposing presence. "The first time I saw you," he began, his voice soft with remembrance, "you were standing on an outcropping of rock, bow in hand, tracking a deer across the valley. You were so still, so focused, that I almost missed you entirely." A small smile played across his lips, but then the wind shifted, carrying your scent to me, and everything changed. "My scent?" Isolde frowned. "But I've barely had a scent since my mother died. That's why my old pack mistrusted me. They couldn't read me, couldn't tell if I was lying or loyal." Kale's golden eyes held hers. "To them, perhaps. But to me, your scent is the clearest thing I've ever encountered. Wild pine and mountain snow and something uniquely yours." His hand moved to cup her cheek. "The moment I caught it, I knew. You were mine. My mate. My queen." Through the bond, Isolde could feel the absolute truth of his words, the bone-deep certainty that had driven him to search for her, to wait for her, to believe in her when she didn't believe in herself. "And if I had refused?" she asked, needing to understand the man she was now bound to. "If I had rejected the claiming, I would have waited," he said simply, "for as long as it took, a year, a decade, however long you needed." The conviction in his voice, echoed through their bond, left no room for doubt. This Alpha King, this warrior who had united warring packs through sheer force of will, would have waited patiently for her to come to him of her own accord. The realization humbled her. "I still don't know if I can be what your people need," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "A queen should have diplomatic skills, political knowledge. I've been alone so long. I've forgotten how to be part of a pack, let alone lead one." Kyle's hands tightened around hers. "You don't need to know everything at once," he said. "Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to seek them, to admit when you don't know, to listen when others speak." His eyes held hers, golden and intense. "You have that courage, Isolde. You've had it all along." Through their bond, she could feel his absolute faith in her, unwavering, uncompromising. It was a heady sensation, being believed in so completely. "Rest now," he said, rising to his feet. "Tomorrow is soon enough to begin your new life as queen." Isolde caught his hand as he turned away. "Where are you going?" "To speak with my commanders," he replied. "There are matters that need attention, and you need time to adjust to the claiming bond." She could feel his reluctance to leave her, the pull of the new bond making separation uncomfortable for them both. But she could also sense his respect for her need for space, his determination to give her time to process everything that had happened. "Thank you," she said softly, "for understanding." Kyle lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent a shiver of warmth through her. "Rest, my queen," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her very bones. "I'll return soon." As he ducked through the tent flap, Isolde felt the physical distance between them like a tangible thing, the claiming bond stretching uncomfortably. But beneath that discomfort lay something else, a sense of connection she had thought lost forever when she fled to the mountains. She was no longer alone. For the first time in 10 years, Isolde belonged to someone, to something larger than herself. And as she curled up among the furs of what was now her bed, her hand drifting to the claiming mark on her neck, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this new life might be worth the risk of trusting again. Isolde awoke to unfamiliar warmth. For a moment, disoriented by the soft furs beneath her and the absence of cold mountain air, she tensed, until memory rushed back. The claiming, the bond, Kale, her mate. As if summoned by her thoughts, she felt him through their connection before she saw him, a steady presence radiating strength, and something softer, something that felt remarkably like contentment. He sat at the small table near the brazier, studying maps spread across its surface, his brow furrowed in concentration. Through the bond, Isolde sensed the exact moment he realized she was awake. His head lifted, golden eyes finding hers across the tent. "You slept deeply," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her bones. Isolde sat up slowly, adjusting to the strange intimacy of having someone else in her mind, aware of her emotions as she was of his. "How long?" she asked, pushing her hair back from her face. "Nearly a full day," Kale replied, rising from his chair to approach the bed. "The claiming bond takes a toll, especially on wolves who have been alone as long as you have. A day." She had lost an entire day to sleep. On the mountain, such carelessness would have been fatal. "The pack," she said suddenly, remembering her new responsibilities with a jolt of anxiety. "I should have—" "The pack is fine," Kale interrupted gently, settling on the edge of the bed beside her. "And you needed rest." Through their bond, she felt his genuine concern for her well-being, free from judgment or disappointment. It was a strange sensation, being cared for after so many years of fierce self-reliance. "I'm not used to sleeping so long," she admitted. "On the mountain it wasn't safe." Kale's expression softened. "You're safe now, Isolde. No one in these territories would dare harm the Alpha Queen." Alpha Queen. The title still felt foreign, ill-fitting, like clothes meant for someone else. Yet the claiming mark on her neck was undeniable, the bond between them humming with life and power. "What happens now?" she asked, voicing the question that had been circling in her mind since she accepted his claim. Kyle studied her face, his golden eyes thoughtful. "Now you meet your people, not as a ceremony or spectacle, but as their queen." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face with surprising gentleness. "And you begin to build a life here, with me." The simplicity of his answer belied the enormity of the change it represented. A life among wolves after a decade of solitude. Leadership after years of answering to no one but herself. Partnership after convinced herself she needed no one. "I don't know if I remember how," she confessed, the bond between them making honesty easier than it might otherwise have been. To be part of a pack, to be close to someone. You remember more than you think, Cale said, his voice soft but certain. Through their bond, she felt his absolute faith in her, unwavering, unshakable. And what you've forgotten, you'll learn again. We have time, Isolde. Before she could respond, a commotion outside the tent caught their attention. Raised voices, the sound of running feet. Cale was on his feet in an instant, his posture shifting from relaxed to alert as Thora burst through the tent flap without ceremony. "Forgive the intrusion, Alpha," she said, her eyes flicking briefly to Isolde before returning to Cale. "But there's a situation that requires your immediate attention." Cale's expression hardened. "What situation?" "Hunters from the Blackthorn pack were found in our hunting grounds," Thora replied, her tone carefully neutral. "They claim they were pursuing a deer that crossed into our territory, but they were well beyond the boundary markers. Blackthorn, Isolde's old pack, the pack that had accused her of treason, that would have executed her if she hadn't fled to the mountains." Her heart rate quickened, a chill spreading through her veins despite the warmth of the tent. Through their bond, she felt Cale's immediate concern, his attention shifting from Thora to her, sensing her distress. "Isolde?" he questioned softly. "I'm fine," she said automatically, though the bond between them made the lie transparent. Cale's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as he turned back to Thora. "Bring them to the central clearing. I'll deal with this personally." "Already done," Thora confirmed. "They're waiting." Cale nodded, dismissing his beta with a gesture before turning back to Isolde. "You don't have to face them," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I can handle this alone." The offer was tempting. To stay hidden in the tent, to avoid confronting the pack that had betrayed her, the wolves who had been so quick to believe the worst of her. But even as the thought formed, Isolde knew she couldn't hide, not if she was truly going to be queen. "No," she said, rising from the bed. "If I'm to be your queen, then I should stand beside you, especially in this." Pride flashed through their bond, warm and bright, as Cale watched her. "Then let's give your old pack a proper introduction to their new queen." The central clearing was tense when they arrived, a circle of Cale's warriors surrounding 3 kneeling wolves. Isolde recognized them immediately. Garrick, her former alpha's son. Rowan, once a friend who had turned on her when accusations flew. And Elias, an elder who had voted for her execution. They looked smaller than she remembered, less intimidating. Or perhaps it was she who had changed, strengthened by years of survival and the power of an alpha king's claiming. The crowd parted as Cale approached, Isolde at his side. Through their bond, she could feel his controlled anger, his protective instinct warring with diplomatic necessity. The Blackthorn pack wasn't under his rule, not yet, but they bordered his territories, making them potential allies or enemies. Garrick looked up as they approached, his eyes widening as they landed on Isolde. "You," he breathed, shock and disbelief warring on his features. "You're alive. Disappointed?" Isolde asked, her voice steadier than she expected. "Silence," Cale commanded, his alpha power rolling through the clearing like thunder. "You stand accused of trespassing in Northern Territory lands. Explain yourselves." Elias, always the diplomat, stepped forward. "Alpha King, we meant no disrespect. We were pursuing game that crossed the boundary markers. It was a mistake, nothing more." "A mistake that took you 3 miles into my territory?" Cale's voice was dangerously soft. "A mistake that brought you within sight of my mate's former home?" Understanding dawned on the Blackthorn wolves' faces as they looked between Cale and Isolde, noting their proximity, sensing the bond between them. "She's your—" Garrick began, then stopped, clearly struggling to reconcile the Isolde he remembered, the quiet, scentless wolf his pack had condemned, with the woman standing beside the most powerful alpha in the territories. "Queen," Cale finished for him, his hand finding the small of Isolde's back. "Yes, Isolde of the Blackthorn is my claimed mate and the alpha queen of the Northern Territories." The declaration hung in the air, a challenge and a warning wrapped in one. Through their bond, Isolde could feel Cale's fierce pride, his satisfaction at their stunned expressions. "Impossible," Rowan muttered, forgetting himself. "She was sentenced to—" "Death," Isolde interrupted, stepping forward. For a treason I didn't commit. I remember, Rowan. I remember everything. A tense silence fell over the clearing. Even Kale's warriors, who had been watching with barely concealed hostility, seemed to hold their breath. The past is the past, Elias said carefully, his eyes flickering between Isolde and Kale. What matters now is the future. Relations between our packs. Relations? Isolde echoed, a bitter laugh escaping her. Your pack tried to execute me for warning about a threat that later killed half your wolves. Your alpha ignored my concerns about the rogues gathering at your southern border, because I couldn't be properly read without a scent. The Blackthorn wolves exchanged uneasy glances, and through the bond, Isolde felt Kale's surprise at her revelation. Not that she had been falsely accused, but the specific nature of the accusation. You knew about the Crimson Moon attack, he stated, his voice hard as he addressed the kneeling wolves. She warned you, and you silenced her. Garrick had the grace to look ashamed. We didn't believe her. She had no evidence, just her word, and without a scent. Without a scent. You couldn't tell if she was lying, Kale finished, disgust evident in his tone. So you condemned her to death, lost half your pack to the very threat she warned you about, and now you expect diplomatic relations? Isolde felt his anger building through their bond, the alpha's protective instincts flaring hot and dangerous. His hand on her back tensed, claws beginning to extend. Kale, she said softly, just for him. His golden eyes met hers, burning with righteous fury on her behalf. Through their connection, she sent him calm, steadiness, a reminder that she had survived, that she was here now, that the past couldn't hurt her anymore. After a moment, he nodded once, his claws retracting, though his expression remained thunderous. Isolde turned back to the Blackthorn wolves, these representatives of a past she had fled, a pack that had been so quick to discard her. They looked small now, diminished by their own failings, and by comparison to the strength surrounding her. You're lying about why you're here, she said, surprising everyone, including Kyle. You didn't follow game across the border. You came looking for me. Garrick's head snapped up. How did you— I spent 10 years watching, learning to read what cannot be scented, Isolde interrupted. You came to see if the rumors were true, if the Mountain Witch had really become the Alpha King's queen. Through the bond, she felt Kale's surprise shift to admiration, his anger giving way to curiosity as he watched her handle the confrontation in her own way. Our alpha is dying, Elias admitted finally, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Garrick is his heir, but the pack is divided. Half believe his leadership led to the Crimson Moon massacre. They say— He hesitated, glancing nervously at Garrick. They say we should have listened to you. And now you want what? Isolde asked, crossing her arms. My forgiveness? My blessing for Garrick's ascension? We want an alliance, Garrick said, meeting her eyes directly for the first time. With the Northern Territories, with your mate, with you, if you'll grant it. The request hung in the air, weighted with a decade of history, of betrayal and survival. Isolde felt Kyle's silent support through their bond, his willingness to follow her lead in this matter that was so personal to her. She studied the wolves before her, these representatives of a pack that had once been her own. They had failed her, yes, had been blinded by prejudice and fear, but they had suffered for it, paid in blood for their mistake. The Blackthorn pack turned its back on me when I needed them most, she said finally, her voice carrying across the clearing. They would have executed me for speaking truth they didn't want to hear. She paused, feeling the weight of every eye upon her, but a queen cannot rule with vengeance in her heart. She felt Kale's surprise through their bond, followed quickly by understanding and pride. The Northern Territories will consider an alliance with the Blackthorn pack, she continued, straightening to her full height, under certain conditions. Name them, Garrick said immediately, hope flaring in his eyes. First, you will acknowledge publicly that the accusations against me were false, and that my exile was unjust. Isolde's voice was steady, firm. Second, any wolf within your pack who wishes to relocate to the Northern Territories will be granted safe passage and welcome. And third, she glanced at Kale, who nodded encouragingly. The Blackthorn pack will submit to the authority of the Alpha King and recognize the Northern Territories' sovereignty. It was a bold demand, essentially requiring the Blackthorn pack to surrender their independence. Through their bond, Isolde felt Kale's approval, his admiration for her strategic thinking. Garrick and Elias exchanged glances, clearly weighing their limited options. Their pack was weakened, their alpha dying, their territory vulnerable to the very rogues that had once attacked them. "We accept your terms," Garrick said finally, bowing his head in submission. "The Blackthorn pack will acknowledge its mistake in condemning you, welcome any alliance with the Northern Territories, and recognize the Alpha King's authority." A murmur ran through the gathered wolves, surprise and approval mingling as they watched their new queen secure an alliance without bloodshed, expanding their territory through diplomacy rather than conquest. "Then return to your Alpha," Isolde said, her voice gentler now. "Tell him the Northern Territories extend protection to the Blackthorn pack, and that when he passes, his successor will be confirmed by the Alpha King and Queen." The Blackthorn wolves bowed deeply, first to Kyle, then, with visible hesitation but genuine respect, to Isolde. As they were escorted from the clearing, Isolde felt a weight she hadn't known she carried lift from her shoulders. Not forgiveness, exactly, but closure. A closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. Kale's arm slipped around her waist, pulling her gently against his side. Through their bond, she felt his pride, his admiration, and beneath it all, a growing affection that warmed her from within. "You handled that perfectly," he murmured, his voice pitched for her ears alone. Like a queen born to the role, Isolde leaned into him, allowing herself to draw strength from his solid presence. "I'm not sure where that came from," she admitted. "It just felt right." "It was right," Kyle assured her, his golden eyes warm as they met hers. "You offered justice without vengeance, strength without cruelty. Those are qualities of a true queen." Around them, the pack was dispersing, returning to their duties with a new respect in their eyes when they looked at their alpha queen. No longer was she just the mountain survivor their king had claimed. She was a leader in her own right, worthy of their loyalty. "Come," Kyle said, taking her hand. "I want to show you something." He led her away from the clearing, through the camp, and up a gentle slope to where a single massive oak stood sentinel over the valley. From this vantage point, Isolde could see not only the entire encampment, but also the mountains beyond. Her mountains, where she had survived for a decade. "This was the first place I saw you," Kyle said, his voice soft with memory. "I was scouting the territory borders, considering how to unite the northern packs, when I spotted a lone figure on the ridge across the valley. His eyes, warm amber in the afternoon light, found hers. You were hunting, moving with such grace and certainty through terrain that would have challenged my strongest warriors." Isolde felt his sincerity through their bond, his genuine admiration for her skills, her resilience. "I watched you for hours," he continued, "and when I returned to my pack that night, I knew that uniting the territories was only the beginning, that the Northern Territories would never be complete without a queen, without you." His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing gently over her cheekbone. "I didn't know then what I know now. That you would exceed every expectation, that you would face your past with such courage, that you would command respect with nothing but the strength of your character." Through their bond, Isolde felt the depth of his feelings, pride, admiration, desire, and something deeper, something that made her wolf stir with recognition and longing. "I still have so much to learn," she said, leaning into his touch. "About being a queen, about leading a pack, about being a mate." Cal's smile was gentle, his golden eyes warm with promise. "And I'll be beside you for every step of that journey, not to lead you, but to walk with you. Partners, equals." In that moment, with the mountains behind her and Kyle before her, Isolde felt something settle within her, a certainty, a rightness that she hadn't experienced in years, perhaps never. This was where she belonged, not alone on a mountain surviving day to day, but here, with a mate who saw her strength and valued it, with a pack that needed the very qualities her isolation had forged in her. She had survived 10 winters in the mountains, each one colder and more solitary than the last. But as Kale's lips found hers, as their claiming bond hummed with shared emotion and promise, Isolde knew she would never face another winter alone. The lone wolf had found her home. The survivor had become a queen. And somewhere in the northern skies, as spring finally claimed the land, the gods who had guided her path smiled upon their chosen wolves, Alpha and Luna, king and queen, united at last. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.